In this lesson, you're going to learn how to move an object around a page with just your arrow keys using JavaScript. So this tutorial's a bit of a strange one. I can't think of a good reason why you'd want to do this, but it's quite a good exercise to learn about the keyboard events in JavaScript and how you can adjust elements on the page. But if you can think of a good example of when you might use this, feel free to post it in the comments below. So we've actually just got one div element on the page at the moment, which as you can see has got a red background colour and a set width and height. And it's also been set with an absolute position, and its top and left values have been set to 0. So two things about the position and the top and left values. It's quite important for those to be set, otherwise this technique won't actually work. So let's get on to writing some code to make this block move when we press our arrow keys on the keyboard. So the first thing I'm going to do is just create a variable called modifier and set it to a value. And you'll see in a moment that this is the pixel value that the block will move every time we press one of the arrow keys. The next thing we'll do is we'll set up an event listener to listen for the key down event. And then we'll destructure the block element to extract its style property. And we're going to adjust its top and left values based on what arrow key the user has pressed. So this is a really good chance to use a switch statement, which we don't use very often in JavaScript, but because the key property that's set in the keyboard event object is just a string, we need to check that string for a match and adjust the properties of the block depending on which key the user pressed. And each of our case statements within the switch looks a little bit like this. So for example, with the case of the string being arrow up, we'll set the top property of the style object that we've extracted from the element to equal the same value that it is already minus the modifier as set outside of the event listener. And the top property actually requires a string with pixel values, so we'll wrap all of that inside of a template literal. So let's just fill out the other case statements. And of course for the arrow left and arrow right cases, we're adjusting the value of the left property. So that's all we pretty much need. If we go back to our window in our document, you can see by pressing the various arrow keys, we can make that red block move around the page. So as I said earlier, this isn't something that you're going to incorporate into every project that you're going to be doing, but hopefully you can see from the code that there's some interesting points to take away, such as working with the key down event, and also programmatically adjusting elements of the object style.